Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to the Wired Thinker. Welcome for the maiden video on the Wired Thinker. I am TGL, and today we are going to talk about the hottest topic in town right now. Yes, the hottest topic in town right now, and that is the Uganda's Anti-homosexuality Bill 2023 that was enacted and signed into law by His Excellency the President of Uganda. I want to thank the President of Uganda, the Parliament of Uganda, the people of Uganda for finally signing into law what the Western media termed as a controversial law or a controversial bill. As long as I am concerned, this is not a controversial law. The Western media coined the word controversial to make it appear like it is, but it isn't. In any case, in Uganda, as long as I'm concerned, as long as I've been knowing things that happens in Uganda, this has been the most straightforward law. Why? It went through all the required procedures for it to become into a law. So the word controversy loses meaning unless the word controversy has lost the meaning we know. But as long as the word controversy is what we used to know, then the law isn't controversial. One, it went through consultations. The members of parliament went down to the electorates, to the Wananchi, down there, including myself speaking. They were consulted. The people have their say on what they want. Parliament went and debated in Parliament elaborately, not just a one-day thing. They elaborately debated. There was the advice from the Attorney General on the legal implications of what will soon be a law. The Minister of Finance provided the letter of financial implications of the law. And then the President went through. He even had an opportunity to take it back to Parliament for re-examination because of certain issues in the law which he felt was supposed to be corrected. Then after that, he eventually reigned supreme over it by signing it into a law. Where is the controversy? And why should the Western media taint what is one of the most clean laws in Uganda to be a controversial law? This law is not controversial. It is one of the best laws that has been passed in Uganda. I want to thank the President of Uganda for exhibiting sheer resilience against the backlashes, against the condemnations from the West, for standing tall, for standing brave to sign this bill into a law. Whether people of the world likes it or not, it is now a law in Uganda. By the way, this law is for Uganda. It has nothing to do with the United States of America. It has nothing to do with the European Union. It is our law. It is for us. We made it ourselves. We signed it ourselves. It is going to serve us. It is not going to serve the US. It is not going to serve the European Union. It's not going to serve the Eastern world. It's not going to serve China. It's not going to serve Russia. It's not going to serve Saudi Arabia. It's not going to serve uh, these people, the United Arab Emirates. It's not going to serve even our closest Kenya right now. So it is our law. Why should somebody from somewhere call it a controversial law? Do you have control over what we deemed as a law in our country? Definitely not. As long as Uganda is a sovereign state, this isn't a controversial law, and it is a law that is going to stand the test of time. It is going to actually, this is a law that's going to inspire the rest of the African states to actually enact a law of their own that is going to be anti-homosexuality. Because there is no scientific evidence that homosexuality is one of the human norms. It is one of the human abnormals. There's no scientific proof that a man is born inclined to the same sex sexually. It is not there. There is no such research. We have seen through books, we have read through literatures. There is nothing like that. In any case, the opposite is suggested in most of the books. We have read psychology, you have learned about the Oedipus and the electro complexes, where a child, even a child born, is more inclined to the opposite sex. It's a natural phenomenon in humans. The psychology that the white men brought to Africa also suggests the same thing. All these theories were not developed by Africans. The psychological theories you have there by the Frenchmen, the Americans, the Europeans. So why do you come out and try to contradict your own self? This is not going to work in Uganda. I want to thank the president. You did your best. It is now us to ensure that the law is put to functionality with the due response it deserves. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want us to put this law into context, especially vis-a-vis the United States threats to remove aid from Uganda. The United States is threatening to remove aid from Uganda. I am saying the United States, do not only remove aid. I want to see you close your embassy from Kampala. We want to see whether Uganda is going to vanish from the face of the world just because the United States have withdrawn their aids from Uganda. We want to see that. That won't happen. What I know is the population will reach an equilibrium where the resources of the country will have to sustain the population even when there is no aid from the United States of America. And who told you that when you remove your aid, then we cannot have alternatives? The world is dynamic. There are people who are looking up to fill your gaps. That's what we know, and we are very sure for it. So, the United States are threatened to withdraw aid from Uganda. I want us to follow this very carefully, very carefully. I can say by opportunity cost, I would say the United States will withdraw their aid because as long as this aid is attached or has a string attached to it, like we have to accept homosexuality in Uganda, then the aid continues. Let us start. Uh, a research was conducted in 2009 by Stanford University, its medical department, the Department of Medicine, on the rate of contraction of HIV through the different sexual behaviors. And what is beautiful is that if it is a vaginal sex, when you sleep with with your partner and you had an unprotected sex, the vaginal sex receptive, the person who is going to be penetrated, has a 0.08% chance of contracting HIV from an infected partner. That can be translated into one infection per 1,250 exposures, while the person who is inserting in the vaginal sex has only 0.04% chance of contracting HIV, and that translates to one infection for every 2,500 exposures. That is the research conducted for it. That is for vaginal. Now let us go and compare when it is anal, because homosexuality means one person is going to insert in the anal sex. It is an anal sex. It has nothing to do with any other sex. Homosexuality means anal sex. That is sure. And that is what the US wants in Africa, anal sex. So let us see. This study was done in the US. So the US have nothing to run away from this research. It is saying that for anal sex, the chances that you is going to be penetrated, the chances of you getting infected is 1.4%. That That equates to one infection every 71 exposures. Now you imagine, if it is sexual vaginal sex, the chance is one infection in 1,250 exposures, meaning your chance of contracting, if it is vaginal, your chance is just one out of trying it for 1,250 times. But when it is anal, the research is showing that your chance is 1 in 71. You can imagine that. You can imagine that difference. Now, when we bring that into context, it means the anal sex, your chances of getting infected through the anal sex is 18 times the, the chances of getting infection when you are going vaginal. Now you look here. 18 times more chance of getting infected from HIV when you are going anal than when you are going vaginal. The US wants us to accept homosexuality in Uganda, meaning they want us to accept the anal sex. Look here. If Uganda is struggling to contain the 0.08% equivalent to one infection per 1,200 infection HIV, to the extent that it cannot sustain its own self, it has to call for the aid from the US. Now, the same US want us to accept anal, which is 18 times more. 18 times more chances of having HIV infections. What is the opportunity cost here? Should we accept the law? Should we maintain our law and maintain our one infection per 1,250? Or should we repeal the law and then eventually we have 18 times more infections per unit exposure? Which one are we going to do? Now let us look at this. The United States aid to Uganda generally, not only for HIV prevention and fight, the general US aid to Uganda stands at an annual 950 US dollars, which translates to about 2.325 trillion Ugandan shillings. That is the aid they sent to Uganda, irrespective of the field. The US aid stands at about 3.3 trillion Ugandan shillings per year. Now, if the US wants us to adopt homosexuality in Uganda and repeal our law, it means Ugandans will stand at 18 times more chances of getting infected, meaning the HIV infection rate has to increase by approximation of 18 times. So that implies that the United States aid to Uganda has to go 18 times more. So if we are going to trade this law for the aid, then the US has to increase their funding by an approximation of 18 times so that we still remain at the same par. But what I know is the US is faced with its own problem. They got exposed during the coronavirus. You can see beddings. The hospitals in Uganda lack the beddings to contain coronavirus patients. So it was laid bare that the US also has a struggles of its own. In fact, what they're struggling to do in Africa is a matter of identity. They want to show to the world they are still relevant, but they have their own struggle. After when you saw Biden tumbling on the ground from some useless bag put on his path, the US is no longer what we used to think they are. They are struggling, so I'm not very sure, and there is no guarantee that the US can increase their aid to Uganda by 18 times. As long as they cannot increase their aid to Uganda by 18 times, then they rather withdraw the aid completely. Because by accepting homosexuality, we are increasing our chances of HIV infection 18 times more. Now you look, we said the US aid to Uganda right now stands at 3.325 trillion Uganda shillings. If they are to increase that by 18 times, it is going to approximately 60 trillion Ugandan shillings in aid that they should provide. And that is more than the Uganda's budget, surprisingly. Ladies and gentlemen, if the US want us to trade this law we have signed with their aid, then they need to increase their aid, which stands at 950,000 US dollars or 3.325 trillion Uganda shillings. They need to increase it by 18 times to go to 60 trillion. And that cuts for the entire budget of Uganda because the implications of the HIV infections that we shall have in Uganda will will go away with will be felt in all the departments and in the sections. When I'm weak covering HIV, I cannot dig, meaning agriculture is affected. I cannot work efficiently, meaning the industries are going to be affected. Because of the psychological disorientation, I cannot work well in offices. It means the private sector is going to be affected. Every time I'm falling sick, it means the labor force is going to be affected. All the fields are going to be affected. Meaning technically, US has financed the entire budget of Uganda if they want us to trade this law. If they cannot, which I know they cannot because they don't have the capacity to do it, because of their own struggles in their backyards, they will not do this. So if they cannot do that, we are not going to accept homosexuality or the anal sex, which is 18 times more dangerous than when we have the vaginal sex in terms of HIV, then we are not going to repeal the law. I urge the president to remain strong. He has demonstrated. I don't want him to become a laughing stock for Africans. That you exhibited some kind of confidence. You sign it into a law, then all of a sudden you are reversing yourself. So you're someone not to be trusted. The president at his age should be somebody who is a principal, who will always stand for his ideology. He has proven that over time, right? He has done it. Stand on the truth and do not mince your words when it comes to this. So the US cannot give us 18 times more the aids they're giving right now. So if they feel they want to remove the aid, let them remove. And my advice is that if they cut off their aids, they should go ahead and close the embassy in Kampala. We are going to raise Chinese flag in their embassies. We are going to raise the United Arab Emirates flags there. We don't care right now. You deal with a person who is ready to respect you as a human being. You don't need to deal with somebody who thinks you're a tool for manipulation. This is not going to happen. When it is a relationship, a bilateral relationship, then it has to be a relationship where everybody gains from the relationship. It is not going to be a relationship that is premised on subduement. Somebody feels he's more superior than you and therefore dictates what you're supposed to do in your backyard. That is not relationship. That is not sovereignty. We are a sovereign state and we have the right to decide what we feel is right or wrong for our nation. So this goes directly to the face of the bigots of minority rights in the US. Whatever nice you have got in the anal sex, whatever, does not apply to African values, and we are going to sacrifice every drop of blood to see that it will not work in Africa. Especially in Uganda, we have already set a precedence. Uganda has shown to African states that that is how it feels to be a truly independent country. Uganda has demonstrated that it is a nation that is seeking self-identity, self-independence, and freedom to exercise what it deems desirable for the people. It is not about the aid. Cut the aid and we see what's going to happen. Uganda is not going to go down to zero human beings. That will not happen. It will not happen. Go out with your aids. We do not need your aids. Go and sort out your differences, sort out your problems. I was even made to aware that even the states in the United States, some of them have not yet signed this, have not yet officially accepted the homosexuality thing. So who are you to impose it on Uganda? This is a new breed of Ugandans. So if the US cut the aids coming to Uganda, they are 950 US dollars to Uganda. We want to demolish. I will have to be in the team that will see that the embassy is demolished, or at worst, their signpost, wherever, is destroyed. We are going to raise a different flag in the US embassy in Uganda. and close the U.S. embassy in United Ugandan embassy in New York or any part, or whether it's Washington D.C. or wherever. We close them. There's no relationship, and we see we are not going to die. We existed before the United States of America. United States of America is a product of amalgamations. We cannot explain it. Uganda existed before the United States of America. Africa existed before the United States of America. This is a concoction, and they are not going to move around trying to exploit us on what they claim is the money they have. All this, Bob Marley said, were stolen from Africa and taken to America. And now they're being brought back with conditional things, with conditions. We are not going to succumb. It is time to say no to the Western powers, and we shall stand by it. So, stop your aid from Uganda, cut your aid from Uganda, we close your embassy, we close ours in America. Business as usual, we do business with other people who are ready to respect us as humans. Our dignity stands at the forefront. And no amount of money from the United States, no amount of stolen money from Africa is going to degrade Africans into useless laughing stocks. That has come to the end. Mr. President, I am speaking coincidentally on a Heroes Day, and I would like to say that you are our hero. Thank you.